Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Doug with News and Views by Doug. So today is Monday, May 25th, and here in the United States, we are celebrating and participating in our Memorial Day, where we honor our fallen men and women who have died in combat for this country. So, I'm actually going to start off a little bit different. I'm going to start off with kind of a feel good story and then delve into the rest of the crap that I normally get into. But I just found out about 3 weeks ago there was a game between the Buffalo Sabres and the Boston Bruins in the National Hockey League, and the game was being played in Buffalo. And, it's a tradition that when you have a team from a foreign country come to the United States, and I guess they do it in other countries, you play that country's national anthem before you play your own national anthem. And it's to honor that team. Well, apparently, even though it was two American teams, when you look at the map of Canada and the United States, Toronto, Canada is right here. And then you've got the Buffalo, New York. And they're right on top of each other. And apparently, the Buffalo Sabres draw a lot of Canadian fans because, as you're well aware, Canada is hockey. The greatest player in the world, Wayne Gretzky, he's Canadian. So, anyways, the singer is Cami Clooney, and she's been singing the national anthems for the last several years for the Buffalo Sabres. It's her job. And in this particular night, she went out onto the ice and started to sing the Canadian national anthem. And the microphone, it malfunctioned. So she realized it malfunctions. She turns around. You'll see the video here. And she turns around to see if they're going to hand her a different mic, and they didn't. But while she was doing that, you could still hear the Canadian national anthem being sung. And then you look, and it's all the fans in the stand. It was Americans and Canadians singing the Canadian national anthem. And they did an amazing job. And, quite honestly, I've always sung the Canadian national anthem whenever it was a Canadian team, here in San Diego, or if I was at a different venue. The Canadian national anthem is beautiful. It's a great song. Not as good as the American national anthem, but it's up there.
Oh, Canada, our home and native, hatred, love, and
But it was just amazing to see that the Americans would sing Canada's national anthem. Because if you go back to 2025, the president of the United States was throwing tariffs around the world, trying to increase our sales or punish these other countries that were not being fair in their trading. And he hit Canada with tariffs, and the Canadians got pissed. So we'll show you another video where there's a game or a match in Canada. And during the national anthem for the United States, the Canadians were booing. And that kind of shook the sports world. It had been unheard of, and it was kind of sad that our friends to the north would do that. But there is still a bunch of stuff going on with Canada, and here's where we kind of get back into my normal mode. Canada has not been a great ally when it comes militarily or politically. Lately, things have been going kind of south. And part of it is they're not spending enough money on their military to keep up with their obligations for NATO and just the defense of North America. And the United States is spending billions and billions of dollars defending Canada. And it's getting so bad with the Canadian Armed Forces that they just issued an edict to their troops that if you're in a non-deployable unit, you need to send your gear to deployable units. That includes backpacks, utility belts, flak vests, and eventually it might be helmets and stuff like that. But if your unit's not going to be deployed, and I kind of get that you don't need that equipment. Here in the United States, especially in the Army and the Marines, everybody has the gear. If we go to war, you've already got the gear issued to you. So Trump is doing a lot of things. He pulled our NORAD Joint Commission, and he's saying pretty much Canada might be on their own, and we're not real happy with NATO anyways. And then last week there was some kind of message that went out that Canada was forming another type of alliance with England and Iceland. Now on to further news. So yesterday, President Trump announced that, we were this close to getting a peace treaty with Iran. But Iran came back as usual saying no. So they supposedly the Iranians shot down a drone either today or late yesterday. And, who knows what's going to happen if we're going to go back to bombing the hell out of them. And we need to. Now, one of the weird things is their Ayatollah was killed in the initial bombing, Ayatollah Khamenei. And his son was supposed to be the next up in charge. And supposedly we killed him. And that's the reports that were coming out. And then it was like, no, he's alive, but critically injured, lost his leg or legs, and wasn't doing well, but he was in hiding. And then the Iranians, they had a big video where they had a big meeting, and they presented a cardboard version of this guy. You'll see the images here. But now, the last couple of days, they're saying that he's alive. He's making decisions for Iran. So we don't know what to believe, if he's dead or alive. We really don't know. I mean, us civilians, we don't know who's in charge of Iran and making those decisions. We don't know if it's him, this new Ayatollah, other politicians, or is it the generals from the IRGC? No one really seems to know who's in charge and who we're going to talk to about making this peace deal. So Iran is just the typical shithole that it's always been. Now, it came out that last week there was an arrest of an Iranian who was coming from Iraq, and he's a member of the IRGC. And Turkey arrested him and then handed him over to the United States. Well, they're investigating. They found out that he was also planning on killing Ivanka Trump. He was going to assassinate her. And this threat's being taken seriously. And the question is, why Ivanka? Well, it's because she's the daughter of President Trump. And this guy basically was saying, well, he's killed my family, so I'm going to kill his family. So, it's never ending. Now, when it comes to Cuba, there's reports that the USS Nimitz, which was supposed to be mothballed, it was taken out of reserve service, put back into active service, and manned. And now it's supposed to be sitting off of Cuba. And we're putting a lot of pressure on Cuba for their government to basically go away, being a communist government. We've filed indictments on Raul Castro for crimes that he was responsible for. We have an embargo on, and we're doing a blockade on Cuba where they can't get oil. So they have no power. Food wise, they're not doing well. And the Cuban people have been attacking the Communist Party stations throughout Cuba. Mexico reportedly ran the blockade and got through with an aid ship. Thank you, neighbors to the south. Now, quite honestly, I don't think about Cuba. I don't think they're really a threat to us. No, we don't like communism, and we really don't like communists so close to us. But unless this whole thing is to free the Cuban people and give them back their country, I personally don't see the purpose in what we're doing. So that's Iran, Cuba, reportedly, and I'm sorry, I'm mixing things up because I'm remembering things. Apparently, we killed a bunch of the IRGC Iranian generals and other leaders in Iraq last week. They were in an apartment having a meeting, and we apparently bombed them. So there's that. Now, here's something I don't normally talk about: the war between Russia and Ukraine. Russia reportedly has been pulling a lot of their troops from the border of the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Estonia. They're pulling them out and sending them to Ukraine. The Russians have suffered a lot of losses in Ukraine with their war. It's been going on for years. And, it's not funny, but North Korea sent a bunch of their troops to go help the Russians and fight Ukraine. But none of these guys have had combat experience. North Korea hasn't been in a war since the 1950s. So, how many years are we talking about? 60, 70 years that they have no combat experience. And they also didn't send their best troops, and the Ukrainians just wiped them out. Well, now Russia's sending more troops in, but apparently yesterday, Ukraine sent over 600 drones and missiles into Russia, and it was a pretty ominous attack. Putin's losing it, and he started sending in more major weapons of mass destruction, whether it be missiles or drones and bombers. But this morning, the Russian foreign minister told all the different foreign politicians and told civilians to evacuate Kiev, that he's going to wipe Kiev off the map. And, Putin doesn't mess around. The Russians also had made claims that they had taken a lot of land in Ukraine, and it turns out that wasn't true. They're making it up. But Ukraine is fighting this war for their survival, and the Russians, they're losing apparently. So now Putin's going to pull out the stops, and he's going to hit Ukraine with the heavy stuff. So question is NATO going to get involved? Are we going to have another war in Europe? I mean, it's like the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And as the great Rodney King said, can't we all just get along? So long story short, folks, I hope you stay safe. We know that we have sleeper cells and other terrorists in the United States, and they're going to hit us. So as I've been saying the last week or so, if you see something, say something. I hope you have a good day, a better day, a good week coming. And for the first time this morning, I said it, and I'm going to say it again in this show. But God bless you, and God bless America. You folks take care of yourselves, and please be safe.